Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on ATLAS.ti for Mac. Begin in just a few minutes here, and I will go ahead and share my screen. And so hopefully now everyone can see me and hear me and see my screen, so we're all connected correctly. And so today we're going to see this global overview of ATLAS.ti for Mac. And my goal here today is really to give you a sense of all the different kinds of things you can do in ATLAS.ti. And so we will be covering quite a lot of contents in a relatively short amount of time. But it's not that I expect everyone to learn every single thing that we'll see today and then know how to use it, but rather I just want to give you an idea of all the different kinds of things you can do in the software so that you have this in mind when you're conducting your own research. And then as you're working on your own analysis and in the future, then maybe you'll remember that, oh, there was some tool that I could use here, something that I liked, but I can't remember how to use it. And then in that case, you can just take a look on our website or our YouTube channel for a quick video tutorial, or you can always reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. But with this webinar, we just want to give this kind of global overview so we can all see in what different ways the software can help us with our analysis. Now, during the presentation, if any questions or comments come up, please feel free to write in the chat here that we have in the Zoom, and then I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Now, in case I don't see your question in the moment, I will definitely take time at the end as well to go through any questions. So don't worry if I don't answer right away, but I will eventually make sure to pay attention to the questions and go through each of them. All right, then. So there aren't any questions to start. I presume everyone can see me okay, can hear my screen. So why don't we go ahead then and begin. So welcome everyone to our webinar on ATLAS.ti 9 for Mac. My name is Ivana Radovojevic, and I'm the project coordinator with ATLAS.ti here in our Europe office. And today I have the pleasure of connecting with all of you to provide this global introduction to the software. And I've also put up our contact information here. And so I invite everyone to always reach out if you ever have any questions about ATLAS.ti, how to get the software, how to use the software, or any of the trainings that we offer. And we'll be happy to help, whether that's via email or telephone, you can count on our support. And the same goes for if you do decide to purchase a license for the software or even one of our courses, feel free to let me know and I'll see if there's any discount coupon that we have available for that. And so throughout the year, we have different kind of seasonal discounts going on. And so I promise I'll always check to offer the highest discount that we have currently available. And it depends on the kind of license and course, but definitely feel free to send me an email, let me know, and then I'll see what I can do. And so you can always reach me at either of these email addresses. And so I'd like to begin by saying, what is ATLAS.ti? And well, what we're looking at here today is a computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software. In other words, ATLAS.ti is a tool that we can use to facilitate our analysis of any kind of unstructured or non-numerical data, so any kind of qualitative data. And the reason we say ATLAS.ti facilitates the analysis is because ATLAS.ti does not do the analysis for us. Rather, this is a tool that we can use and it can accompany us throughout the entire research process and certainly make our whole work in this research and analysis a whole lot easier. ATLAS.ti can help us stay organized and carry out a transparent and integrated analysis. And it's also great for teamwork. We can use it to combine qualitative and quantitative analyses or carry out triangulation. And so it is a really powerful tool that I think is helpful for any kind of qualitative analysis. But it's important to keep in mind that there's no software out there that can analyze all of our qualitative data for us. That's just the nature of qualitative data, that at least today, we still do need a human researcher to also get in there, interpret and make sense of it. But definitely ATLAS.ti is a huge help. They can stay with us throughout the entire research. And we can also analyze a great variety of types of data. And so this might be text data like transcripts from interviews or focus groups. It can also be secondary sources of data or even articles for your literature review. But we can also analyze images, audio recordings, videos, geographic data, survey data from Excel, tweets from Twitter. You can also import if you use the bibliographic reference manager, you can import references there. So virtually any type of qualitative data, you can add into ATLAS.ti so that you can analyze the themes and patterns and meanings across your data. And so today we're going to be seeing ATLAS.ti Mac and version 9. This is our current generation of the software, but ATLAS.ti has been around for many decades now. And so we'll see ATLAS.ti Mac, but I also just wanted to mention that we have 100% compatibility and transferability between Mac and Windows. So if you yourself use both computers, or if you work in a team with a mix, you can certainly count on ATLAS.ti. We also have an online version of ATLAS.ti, and this is ATLAS.ti Web. And so this is a relatively newer version of the software, but we developed this so that there is also a purely online option for using it. Instead of having to download the software on a computer, you just need an internet connection and you log in and keep on working on your project. And so this is also a very interesting option, and especially for collaborating and things like this. I mean, there's certainly things that are worth exploring there. But if you do get a license for ATLAS.ti Mac, it's also good to know that this license will include access to all of the platforms. And so you choose whether you want to use Mac, Windows, or web. You know, it's not that you have to buy a separate license for each. One license includes access to all of them. And then we also have an ATLAS.ti mobile app for tablets. And so if you have an Android tablet or an iPad, you can download this mobile app. And this we always offer for free. Whether or not you have a license, you can download the ATLAS.ti app from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. And then this is also a nice way to start with the project. Maybe if you're out in the field collecting data and you want to start putting things together. And any project created in the mobile version or the web version can be exported and imported into the desktop versions, Mac or Windows, and then you can keep on working on it from there. So you do have this kind of flexibility between them, and you can choose whichever one you would like. And then just a little bit more about the licenses. So as we mentioned, the one license includes access to all the platforms, and our licenses also include full functionality. So it's a one-time purchase and you get the whole software. And then any updates that are released for ATLAS.ti 9 are also included for free. And so here you can see a little bit more information. This license that includes access to ATLAS.ti Mac, it automatically includes access to the web version too. And then we just have different kinds of licenses based on your role. So for example, if you're a student, you can get ATLAS.ti at a significantly reduced cost. But if you're a professor or a professional or researcher, then you can get a single user license for one person. And here you have the option whether you want to purchase the license and own it forever, or you can lease the license and pay for it on a yearly basis. And so then the price you see on the website is for 1 year, and then you pay that each year you want to keep using ATLAS.ti. And we also have multi-user licenses. If you want to get a license for your group or team or department, then you can also get that option. So on the other hand, if maybe after today's webinar, you also want to take a look at ATLAS.ti Web, and maybe you realize that ATLAS.ti Web has everything that you need, and you actually don't need to use the desktop versions, you just want to use the web version. And if that's the case, then you can also get a license that is just for ATLAS.ti Web. And so this license is based on a monthly subscription, and then you pay for each month that you want to use the web version. So we have all these different options depending on what platform you want to use, and then how you would like to pay for it, basically. But definitely, if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to send me an email and I'd be happy to help you out. Now, on the other hand, if you want to already get started with ATLAS.ti today, then you can download the free trial version. And so the free trial version is also the full software, and you get unlimited access for 5 functional days. So it doesn't have to be consecutive. You can do 1 day this week, 1 day next week, and 1 day the week after. But you get 5 days that you can use it as much as you want. And then after that, your project still stays saved and you can still open it and view it. You just won't be able to save any changes that you make on it. But the reason I wanted to mention this is because what you can do is download the free trial and already get started with your project. And then in the meanwhile, take a look at what license to get, order your license. And then even if your free trial expires, your project is still saved. And then when you get your license, you'll activate it, and then you keep working on that same project. So you don't have to reinstall ATLAS.ti, you don't have to start over. You can just keep going with everything you had in the free trial. Now, aside from the licenses on our website, I also recommend you explore all the different learning resources that we have. So for example, if you and your group of colleagues or students or peers want to learn more about ATLAS.ti, you can always request a free on-demand group demo webinar. Basically, you will just tell us what it is about ATLAS.ti that you want to learn more about, and then we'll prepare a free 1-hour online presentation that's personalized for you and your group, or whatever topics you're interested in, and whatever day and time suits you best. Now, if you want to learn ATLAS.ti in even more depth, you can attend one of our premium trainings. And so we offer these premium trainings all year round. They're all online, but we have live online, just like we're connected today in real time. And we have self-paced courses where you have access for 30 days and you complete it according to your own schedule. And so these are all really interesting options. So you can also learn more about ATLAS.ti or about qualitative research. We also have a course on using ATLAS.ti for literature reviews coming out soon. So a lot of different options there. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email and I'd be happy to help out. But also upon completing any of our premium trainings, you will receive an official certificate from the ATLAS.ti Academy. And then aside from the trainings, you can see on our website the full manual that has all the information about the software. We have a research blog with a lot of different helpful articles and tips or interviews. And also what I think is really helpful are the video tutorials. And so as I mentioned before, today, we're going to be covering quite a lot of content. And it's just that so you can plant these ideas in your mind. It's not so that you know exactly how to use every tool. And then when you're working on your own project, you can always go on our website or search for us on YouTube. And then you'll see we have a lot of video tutorials that are very short, but they go into more detail on different specific features of the software. And so that's also a great way to revise any parts of the software. But all this being said, if you do ever have any questions or doubts, you can always count on our support. Just give us a call or send us an email and we'd be happy to help. So then, without any further ado, why don't we go ahead now and take a look at ATLAS.ti 9 for Mac. And I have here opened a project. And this is a sample project that we've created, and it's also available on our website in case you ever want to download it to open it on your own computer to use for learning or for teaching. I mean, we have a variety of sample projects available, so you can also take a look at those if you'd like to see some already created projects in ATLAS.ti. And in this project, we are evaluating the computer game Minecraft. And so this stemmed from parents noticing that their children were playing this Minecraft game a lot, and so then they were evaluating it to see is this a good game for kids or not, or in what ways. And so we just have some data on that here. And so here we are inside ATLAS.ti, right? And just like any other Mac program, we have the menu here at the top where we have all the different options. And so ATLAS.ti Mac is a native Mac software, so anything you can do in your Mac, you can do in ATLAS.ti here. Here on the left-hand side, we have the Project Explorer panel. And from this panel, we can see and directly access any part of our project. And so for example, here we can see we have 47 documents. We can open this list up and we see these 47 documents. So what is a document then in ATLAS.ti? Well, as you maybe have guessed, our documents refer to any source of information that we're going to be analyzing. So our documents are our data. And so we can add our documents. If you just click on the documents icon, you can add them from your computer. Now we can double click and open it up. And remember, documents can be text. So here we have survey responses to 2 open-ended questions, and then we can see exactly how participants answer the questions. Remember, our data can also be videos or audios or images, tweets from Twitter or articles for our literature review. So all of these different types of data would be a document in ATLAS.ti. Now here on the right-hand side, we have what we call the inspector panel. And this panel serves to provide us more detailed information about whatever object we just clicked on. So now that I've opened this document, it tells us it's document 42. We can see the name and more information about it. And we move over here, it's document 1, and then more information on each one. So this inspector panel is just to give us more details about everything. But it's also very nice because we can even directly edit any of this information. If you want to edit the names of documents. And down below, we also see we have a comment space. So every single individual object in ATLAS.ti has its own comment space. And this is basically, you can think of this as like a sticky note that's always going to be attached just to this object. And so this is a space where we can write more information about that object in particular. And so maybe with your documents and with your primary data, if you ever want to write some general notes about this document as a whole, like maybe where this data was collected or when or by whom, I mean, if these things are relevant for you. On the other hand, when we're analyzing articles, doing our literature review, because ATLAS.ti is also a great tool for the literature review. Here, for example, we have the abstract to also summarize it. And what's especially key is to put the reference of the article so we know exactly where it came from. So these are just some examples, to give you some ideas of what you might use the comment space for. But more than anything, I just wanted to point out, what it is that we're seeing here on the right-hand side so we can understand that. But okay then, so we have our data here. And now, how do we go about analyzing our data in ATLAS.ti? Well, we're going to go through and read the text. And anytime you come across anything that captures your attention, something that can help you answer your research question, all you have to do is highlight that segment of the text. And you can highlight as much or as little as you want. And now to save this highlighted segment, we can right-click or click with two fingers, depending on your Mac. So we can right-click on the quotation, and then we have some different options here. So if we just want to save this highlighted segment, we can simply create the quotation. If we click on this option, now on the right-hand side in this margin area, we see this blue vertical bar. And so this is simply showing us the size and location of a quotation in this document. So a quotation in ATLAS.ti refers to any segment of data that we, the researchers, have selected and saved. Also, we can just go through highlighting like this if we want. But on the other hand, as we're reading through this data, maybe we also want to already start capturing our analysis of this data and maybe start organizing all of these quotations. So in that case, what we can also do is directly associate codes with our quotations. Now, a code can be simply a word or a short phrase that's describing something we're seeing in the data. We can also think of codes as tags that we're going to go attaching to our quotations to organize everything. And we can make as many codes as we want, and we can attach as many codes as we'd like. So we really have total flexibility here. And so let's say we find another interesting segment here. So we highlight it, right click, but this time we're going to go straight to apply codes. And so when we click on this, now this coding window appears for us. So on the one hand, we can see all the codes that have already been created in this project. And so this is also nice because then we can really easily use any code that we already have. Here I see that the participant is talking about building things. And yes, we have a code here. So we can just click on the plus button to add that. Now, another great thing about this coding window is that, yes, we can use existing codes, but we can create any code that we want here. And so maybe I see that it's about building things, but also maybe I want to say, trying to think something that we don't have here yet. Maybe about, pursuing your own interests, right? Okay. And so you can type whatever code name that you want here, and then click on the plus button or just press enter on your keyboard. And this code is now created and saved and attached to the quotation. So if we take a look, we have another blue vertical bar, and we have these two codes attached. And so remember, whenever we click on anything, the inspector panel shows us information about that object in particular. So you can also see this here, and how every single one has its own comment space. But so this is the idea that we attach codes to our quotations, and then later we can tell ATLAS.ti, I want to see everything that we found about building things. And with a click of the mouse, we get all the data associated with this code. And so we can make as many quotations as we want, and they can be overlapping, so you can really analyze your data in whatever way you prefer. And so we saw how we can make new codes, but also if you want to use codes that you've already created, on the left-hand side, we can also see all of the codes in the project. So let's imagine here as well, again, they're talking about, now they're talking about skill development in the game. So I have that code right here. And so we can highlight the segment, and we can also attach a code just by dragging and dropping it. And then we save the quotation and also attach the code here. So in fact, you'll notice that often there's more than one way to do the same thing in ATLAS.ti. And that's just so that each of us can work in whatever way we find most comfortable. Many times you can drag and drop things. Also, many times by right-clicking on something, you'll find all the relevant options there. And so I always recommend you try that, when in doubt of how to do something, try right-clicking on it, and then maybe you see the option that you're looking for. And you also probably can see here, we have keyboard shortcuts. And so this is also a really nice way to code if you don't want to take your hands off the keyboard, you can use these shortcuts. And the same buttons are here at the top, so really whatever way you find most comfortable, you can go through coding your data. So coding is certainly an important part. It's something that just about any qualitative methodology follows, that we code the data. But there's another equally important part that also applies to just about any qualitative methodology. And that's, as we are reading the data and attaching our codes, well, we also have a lot of ideas going through our heads, right? What we're reading here, I think it's really interesting, or it reminds me of something I read in an article or what another participant said. And well, I'd like to have a space to write down all these ideas. Well, this is exactly where memos come in. Now, a memo is basically a notebook. It's a blank space that we can use to write down anything that we would like. And naturally, we can create as many memos as we want as well. So let's imagine this notion of building things. It's really interesting to me, and I have some ideas about that, and I want to write them down. So let's create a memo about building things. So we can make a new memo by clicking on the memo icon up here, open up our blank space, and just like any text writing program, you can edit the text, structure it however you want, change the colors. A really nice feature, I think, is that if you press Command D, you enter the timestamp. And so you get the date and the time. And so this is really nice because then we can put the date and time and say, so yeah, now I'm doing my data analysis, and I find it very interesting what participant 12 said about building things, because this reminds me of this other notion. And, and now we can jot down all of our ideas. And so with the memos, we can write our own notes and descriptions of what we're seeing, but we can also dig deeper into the data and write our own critical reflections and analyses, to start asking, well, why are we seeing this? Or to not just take things at their face value, but to really start interpreting what we're seeing in our data. Now, in addition to this, we can also use memos just to keep a list of our tasks and our major milestones we need to keep up with. We can keep our research diary in a memo. And we can even have memos to jot down any ideas or questions or doubts that come to our mind that we want to later follow up on. I mean, basically, the idea here is that whenever something comes across your mind, take a moment and jot it down in a memo, because it's a really good habit to get into. We need to be documenting our whole process. And anyway, when it comes to analyzing the data, many methodologists say that analysis is writing, and you are not analyzing your data if you are not writing. And so it's really, when we force ourselves to put our thoughts into words, this is really how we start to develop a much richer understanding of what's going on in the data. And also these memos are just for us. You do not have to write perfectly and correctly. Really, it's just for you to, make sense of everything. Later, when we're writing up the final report, we'll take the majority of the content from our memos, and that's where we will polish things and use correct terminology and spelling and so on, but not in the memos. In the memos, just let yourself write freely to write down all of your ideas and interpretations. And so, and one thing I forgot to do here is give this a descriptive title. We don't want to have just memo. And there we go, building things. And so here, for example, we also like to create a memo for each research question. And then you can write in what you're finding about each research question in that memo. And so now let's imagine we wrote our ideas here. We can go back, but before moving on with the analysis, let's say it was this quotation in particular that inspired our ideas that we wrote in this memo. So we're going to want to remember that this memo is talking about this quotation, right? Well, just like we can associate codes with our quotations, we can also associate memos. And we'll do that in the exact same way as before. Just drag and drop your memo onto the quotation, and then there we have it. And we can even double click to get a preview and open it again and continue writing. And so this right here, this is such a helpful feature because on the one hand, we're already elaborating the rough drafts of our final write-up here in our memos. And on the other hand, we can directly associate this with the empirical evidence that's supporting what we're saying or illustrating what we're talking about here. And so this is a very helpful feature. And we can also have as many memos as we want in any quotation. And that way, we can definitely gather all the information that we're interested in here. And especially if you have a memo for each research question, then you can attach that to data that's helping you answer that research question. And so, okay, this is really the foundation of the analysis in ATLAS.ti, that we go through selecting segments of data, saving them as quotations, associating codes, and writing in our memos. And if we do this part well, then everything else will be a whole lot easier. And now, this all, of course, is, manual analysis, but since we are here in a computer program, there are also some other tools we can maybe take advantage of to help kickstart our analysis. And so let's imagine I've added all of this survey data here, but I haven't yet read it. And before getting deeply involved in all of it, I just want to have a quick global overview of what these participants are talking about. So in other words, I want to conduct a content analysis. And so if we go to the analysis menu at the top, we have all these different tools here. And for content analyses, we can create word lists and word clouds. And so we'll click here to open up the tool. And now on the left-hand side, we just tell ATLAS.ti what documents we want to look in. So maybe I want to look in all of my survey data and see what all of the participants are talking about. And it makes a word list, and we can see every word that appears, how long that word is, how many times it appears, and what percentage it makes up of the document. We can click on the column headers to reorder the information, so we see the most frequently occurring words first. And then at the bottom, we have some more options here. So one thing that always, stands out to me is that, well, unsurprisingly, the and are the most frequently occurring words, but we're not really interested in articles and prepositions for our content analysis. Rather, I'd like to just have these excluded so we can focus on the more interesting words. And so here we can use stop lists. And at the bottom, you can choose a stop list, or you can also have go list if you only want to focus on particular words. And in case you don't see your stop lists here, you can manage lists. And then you can also import any list, if you have them. Actually, I believe I've moved mine, and that's why they're not appearing here. But when you download ATLAS.ti, you'll have those. And then you just select the language, and so it'll have those removed. And so this is, and we can also look at how many times each word appears in each document. And so then we can even compare across participants. And then if you want to save this table, you can click on this export button, and ATLAS.ti will export this to Excel. And up here, we can toggle between the list view and the Word document view. I'm not sure why I have this appearing here. There we go. So here, now we can see our nice word cloud here, and it's showing us the exact same information, but in this nice visual format. And so we can very quickly and easily see what are the main things that are being talked about, and how frequently it's coming up. And then we can also save this as an image. And this might be something interesting to include in the final report of the presentation. So word lists and word clouds can give us an idea of what our participants are talking about, so we can get this nice kind of general overview before we start reading everything in great detail. And then let's imagine, I see that creativity is coming up a few times. And I really wonder, what is it the participants are saying about creativity? I think that's a really important thing. And I wonder how this game might be helping or hurting that. So if you want to search for a particular word in any of your text documents, you can also use one of our search and code tools. And so in the code menu, we have all these different options. And then, for working with our codes, and in particular, we have search and code tools, which is kind of a form of automatic coding. And if we want to search for a particular word, then we can use text search. So let's take a look. I want to see where participants are talking about creativity. Maybe I'll just select a handful of them just so we can do this quickly. But in this first page, we just tell ATLAS.ti which documents we wanted to search in. And then we can choose individual documents, or as well, we can choose a whole group of documents. So we can create groups to organize the objects as well. So maybe you have men and women. And then if you want to just look at what men said or what women said, then you can also look at groups like that. So we tell it where we wanted to search. And then here we put the word that we want to search for. And then, so what ATLAS.ti is going to do is it'll look for this word, and every time it finds it, it'll automatically save a quotation, and then we can associate codes to these. So here we can choose the context and tell ATLAS.ti what size quotation we wanted to create. And so I want to search for sentences that contain this word. Now, another great thing is that we can also add any synonyms. And so, yeah, I'm interested in when they're talking about creativity, but it's not, this word in particular. I'm interested in this notion of creativity. So yes, maybe also I'd like to see if they're talking about, being experimental or initiatory and pioneer, inventive. And so you can add as many synonyms as you'd like here, and that way we can also expand the search. Another helpful thing is that we can add multiple words. And so maybe here I want to see about creative as well as playing, and then you can again add synonyms. And you can also tell ATLAS.ti whether you want to see both of these words or either of them. And so do you want to find sentences that have creative and play in them, or the sentences that have either of them? And I mean, we can add as many words as we would like here. So you can really build up your text search in whatever way you prefer. And then this is also a really nice option that we can include inflected forms. This basically means that ATLAS.ti will take the root of this word and also identify any other variations of it, so it'll get creative, but it'll also get creativity and, all these different forms, which again, I think is really valuable because I'm not interested in these particular letters. I want to see when they're talking about creativity. And so we have, we build up our search and whatever, in this way, we have all these different options. Let's go ahead and see the results. Oh, you'll excuse me. I am with allergies now in the spring. And okay, so here we have the results. We can see that of these participants, they talked about creativity in 3 different instances. And so it's highlighted the sentence for us. And just like when we were in the document, we see this margin area on the right-hand side. And we can see that we have codes here already. And so now we can even individually code each of these if we want to keep working on it. So again, you can right click on these icons, but also on the other hand, we can simply select everything. And then we can click here on the coding icon to add one code to all of these. And so then you can type in whatever kind of code you would like, and it'll add them to all of the selected quotations. So text search is great for searching for any word or words that we're interested in any of our text data. And then we can very quickly and easily add codes to all of those. Now, another text search tool we have is regular expression search. And so this is a tool, if you're familiar with using a grep when you do search or constructing search strings, then you can use the regular expression search. And so it's basically a more advanced form of the text search. Now, personally, in my own experience, I've always just used text search because it's been more than sufficient because you can really construct it in a lot of different ways. But if you are familiar with using grep and these kinds of things, and you'd like to do that, then you can also use regular expression search. Now, here we have 2 other tools that are also quite interesting. So let's take a look at named entity recognition. So once again, we'll select the documents here. And now, instead of us telling ATLAS.ti what word to look for, ATLAS.ti will go through and identify any time that a person is being mentioned, or a location, or an organization, or anything else like cultural objects or works of art. And so let's go ahead and take a look. So ATLAS.ti is going to go through and see anytime any of these entities are mentioned in the text data. So depending on how much data, this can also take some longer time, but then we'll get to see every different person that comes up in location and so on. And then we can choose which of the quotations from these different entities we want to see. And again, we can either attach codes individually to quotations if we just want to read through the results and code them, or we can just have a code automatically attached to all of them. And so this, I mean, these tools, and I mean, in fact, everything I'm showing you here today is just so you know what you can do, but certainly it always depends on the research question and objectives to decide which tools are actually going to be relevant for you. And so, you know, if you're not interested in analyzing entities, then maybe this tool isn't going to be very useful for you right now. But certainly I want you to be aware you have this option. So if you ever do conduct some research where you're interested in analyzing these kinds of entities, that you know you have this available there. And okay, so now we can see it's showing us the entities that it identified and then how it's categorizing them. And in case you ever notice that it gets something wrong, like maybe Minecraft, I mean, sure, there is the company, the organization, but I'm going to put it as miscellaneous because it's a game, you know, just like Legend of Zelda and Mind Games. So you can correct any of the categories if you would like. And then we just tick the boxes for which results we want to see. And then we click on continue. And once again, we see our results just like before. We see the exact entity here, and we can also work with these individually if we want, or add a code to all of them. And now we also have this option that ATLAS.ti can propose codes for us. And so then I can say, okay, I just want a code where they're talking about Minecraft. Or maybe I want to code all of them where they mention all these other games. And then it attaches those codes for us. And then we can even go back, you know, and keep checking other boxes and seeing the results. But so this is named entity recognition, that it'll find any of these kinds of entities so that we can also very quickly and easily code for those. And finally, let's take a look at sentiment analysis. So this is also another kind of automatic coding tool, but this time ATLAS.ti is going to look for any time someone is expressing a positive, negative, or neutral sentiment. So again, if you're not interested in analyzing sentiments, I understand this might not be a relevant tool for you, but if you are, then I think this can be a great help, because then you can identify sentences to see what kinds of sentiments are being expressed here. And maybe here we can choose individually, because sometimes it picks up on things that maybe don't make so much sense. And again, we can click up here to code for all of these sentiments and just have ATLAS.ti automatically attach the codes for us. So these kinds of tools I think can be particularly helpful in the beginning parts of any project, you know, when you're exploring the data, and you can do a content analysis and some automatic coding to get some initial ideas. And then of course we'll go through and read it ourselves and add our own codes and memos as well. And so we've done a lot with text data, but I also just wanted to show if you're going to be working with videos or audios, and you'll see you can, you know, add this into ATLAS.ti. And in fact, if you have very large videos and audios, then you can even use this option to import them, to actually just create a link to it in your computer so that it doesn't copy it into the project, to keep your project from getting very heavy and slow. But then here we can watch the video and we can listen to it. Same with audio, we just won't have the image in the middle. And then it's the same logic as always when we're working in ATLAS.ti, that we're going to select segments of this video or audio and attach our codes and memos. So to select a segment of the video, we'll just take a look here on the right-hand side where we have the timeline and that margin area as always. And so we can just click, drag, and drop to select a segment of the video. And here we have it on the side is this quotation. And then we can right click to add our codes, as well as just drag and drop our codes and memos from the left-hand side. And you can double click to watch just this section again. And this is really how we can analyze videos and audios. It's just a matter of selecting the segments. And then again, we save this quotation. Now, if you're also analyzing videos, and let's say you also want to capture, you know, the visual aspects of what's going on, And we can also include, we can also create a snapshot. And so if you click on the camera, ATLAS.ti essentially takes a screenshot, and now it's just added this as a new image document in our project. Here we have it, we can open it up, and this is now a static image. And so to analyze images, it's simply a matter of clicking, dragging, and dropping to select a segment of the image. And then just like always, you can just drag and drop your codes from the left onto the quotation to save it. And remember, we can have as many quotations as we would like so that you can analyze as much detail as you want. And so you see, it's always the same idea. It's just a matter of how do you select the segment, but now you know how to analyze text data and multimedia data. So now I'd like to take a little step back from our analysis here. And let's start thinking maybe about how, we've done all this coding and analysis, and maybe now I'd like to take a moment to kind of organize my codes and maybe start seeing some of the results that we're starting to get here. And so, for example, we talked briefly about making groups to organize things. So how might we create groups? Well, we can do all of this kind of organization by accessing any of the managers. So every single entity has its own manager. And we can use these to work with the objects. So if I want to make code groups, then we'll open the code manager. So the manager simply shows us all the codes in our project, and we get more detailed information on each one. And then here on the left-hand side, we can see groups of codes. And so we already organized them, codes that are talking about features, codes that are about benefits. So to create a group, it is simply a matter of selecting the codes you want to group together, and then we just drag and drop it to the left-hand side. And then when we let go, we can give a name to this group. Click there. And there we have it. Now any code can belong to more than one group. So we can make as many groups as we want and organize them in whatever way we want. And then you'll see whenever you click on a code, the groups to which it belongs also appear in bold. So this is great to organize the codes and maybe even start putting them together into overarching categories or themes. And this is how we create groups for any of the entities. So the same goes for documents. So you can organize all of your participants by their different demographics or the articles you're analyzing. I mean, it's up to us to decide what kinds of groups we want to create. But groups, what they can really help with is staying organized on the one hand, just to keep track of everything. And on the other hand, groups work great as filters. And so if we ever want to focus on a specific aspect or category or dimension, then we can make a group for it, and then we can always filter for that. This also means that it's really easy to compare between groups. And then if we want to compare between the benefits and the downsides, and then we can do this very nicely with other kinds of analysis tools we'll see now. But I just wanted to mention this so you can think about, when you're creating your own groups, what kind of groups should I make? And then think, if it's something that's important for your analysis that you would like to see what findings you get from that, or even compare and contrast, like between men and women, for example, then that could be a good idea to make a group. But we can also make groups at any point in the project. So, we don't have to decide a priori all of this, but just to at least get us thinking about this. So besides organizing, and there was one more thing that I also wanted to show here, because another very helpful thing we can do in the managers is export some simple reports of our findings here. So on the one hand, we click on any code and we can also get a preview of all of its quotations down below. And let's say I want to have a report of all the different kinds of benefits that we found. So we can just highlight these codes that we're interested in. And then up here, we have the export report options. And so we always have the option to either export this as a table, so a spreadsheet in Excel, or as a text report, like in a Word document. So we click the option we want, and here we tell ATLAS.ti what information we want included in the report. And we get a preview here on the left-hand side. So I want to see these codes, and I want to see the quotations attached to these codes. And then we can even click on these drop-down arrows to see more detailed information about each one. So I don't just want to see the quotation name, I want to see the full content of each quotation. Maybe we also want to see any other codes or memos that are attached. So We can add as much or as little information as we want in all of these reports, but it's certainly great because then we can see all the relevant information in one single document. So we see the comment we wrote on the code. I see this code has 18 quotations, and here's the first quotation. So it gives us the actual content, other codes and memos that are attached. And since I have memos here, why don't we also see the content of those memos? So then we can also see our own notes and reflections that we wrote about this data. And the second one, if we keep going down, we'll see the next code. We get to even see image quotations. Here's our second code and all of its quotations. So these are, straightforward reports that we just tell ATLAS.ti what information we want, and they can be as simple or as detailed as we would like. And then we can save this to our computer. Now we also have another way that we can create reports and search for any quotation in our project, and that is the query tool. And so this is under the analysis menu. And with the query tool, again, we can tell ATLAS.ti what codes we want to search for, but we can even specify if we want to look in particular documents. So the query tool allows us to search for any quotation basically based on any combination of codes or documents. So by default, well, it just has one code selected here, so we're seeing the quotations of this code. But let's imagine, and so we can build these queries, we just go from left to right. And so you can see what options you have here first. Let's see if my computer will wake up. There we go. So yes, you can click here to select all these different kinds of operators to build our query. I think is coded with is a very helpful one. And then do we want to see quotations of single codes or groups of codes? And so if I want to see all the benefits that were mentioned, instead of just seeing one benefit, I just want to see all the codes of our group benefits. And then it shows us all the quotations from these codes. So this is actually the exact same report that we just exported from the code manager. But the great thing about the query tool is that we can continue to add codes or documents and conduct a more complex query and see what data we get as a result. So we can click on the plus button to add another filter rule here. And maybe I want to see what benefits were mentioned, but in relation to what kinds of descriptions of the game. And so now it's only showing us quotations that have one of these codes and one of these codes. And so we have fewer quotations, but these are much more meaningful quotations. And then we can even do the same with our documents. Actually, I don't want to see just all my data, but I want to focus on documents that come from people who do not play the game themselves. And then it further filters the results. And then again, we can click here to export a report, just like we did before, if we want to save these results. So the query tool lets us search for any quotation in the project based on any combination of codes or documents or groups. Now I'd also like to take a look at some other interesting tools we have here. And let's start with the code co-occurrence table. So all these tools come in handy once we've coded the data, because now we can look at these codes in different ways. And so with this co-occurrence analysis, what we can examine is which codes are appearing together in the data and how many times. And we're going to construct a table, rows and columns. And we just tell ATLAS.ti what codes we wanted to look for. And so in the example we just did, we were looking at the different descriptions that people gave for the game. So we have all these codes about descriptions. And maybe I want to see about these different ways that people described it, what benefits or downsides did they mention at the same time. And so then I'll select the codes for benefits and downsides. Then let's take a look at what the table is showing us here. So if we want to remove empty rows and columns, we can click on compress, and then it'll take out everything that's empty. But now what this table is showing us is that when people were describing the game as addictive, at the same time, in two different instances, they also talked about the benefit of building things, as well as creativity, being educational. They also mentioned the social and emotional danger, or being dangerous and distractive. So we get an idea of which codes are appearing together in the data. This means they can either be both on the same quotation or they're in overlapping quotations. But the point is they're appearing together. And then whenever we see some high co-occurrences, we might want to ask ourselves, why is this? So in 3 different instances, when they talked about the game being challenging, they also talked about creativity. And so we can interpret this, that maybe we're seeing this pattern because when we are challenged is when we're pushed to be creative, to find solutions. And so maybe that's how we can see these 2 things are coming out together in the evaluation here. Really, this is a moment for a memo. And we can open up a memo for our co-occurrence analysis and write down all our interpretations there. And another wonderful thing here is that by clicking on any cell, we can see the data behind these numbers. So to see these exact quotations and where we have these 2 codes appearing. So this is a great way to explore what we have here. Here we have a high co-occurrence, a world of imagination and building things. So this also makes a lot of sense, right? So these are all interesting findings. And this co-occurrence analysis, we always like to say it can offer us this space for serendipity, for something unexpected to come up from the analysis, because we're, really close to the data and coding every little detail. But then this allows us to kind of take a step back and see, we might have patterns that are emerging among codes that we weren't even aware of when we were coding it. But if we see things appearing together frequently, we might want to ask ourselves why this is. Is there some underlying relationship or emergent relationship among these 2 things? Now, if you want to save the table, we can export this to Excel. And on the other hand, a wonderful new feature in ATLAS.ti 9 is that we can also see Sankey diagrams. And so this is the exact same information as what we saw on the table, but it's shown in this wonderful visual format. And so we can see when people describe the game as addictive, we clearly see what kinds of benefits and drawbacks were mentioned. And we can see how frequently each one was mentioned. The thicker the line, the higher the frequency. And so we can see here that although something being addictive could be seen as a bad thing, actually this was talked about most frequently in relation to benefits. So we already get some nice insights, but certainly we very quickly and easily see exactly where we have high co-occurrences and which codes are related with one another. And as always, you click on any part of the Sankey diagram and you see the data behind these. And then we can also save this Sankey diagram as an image. And this is something really interesting to include in final reports or presentations. But it's just a great way to explore our data and start developing other kinds of insights and maybe more nuanced interpretations of our data and all the analysis that we've been doing. So the code co-occurrence table allows us to look at which codes are appearing together across our project. And now let's take a look at the code document table. So again, we're building a table, but now we get to see code frequencies across our project. So how many times the code appears in any part of the project. And so maybe, all these different descriptions of the game, I find them very interesting, how people are interpreting them. And I wonder how many times each of these different codes are coming up across the participants. So we can select individual codes or the groups, and same goes for documents. But I'm not interested in seeing for every single participant what kind of description they gave. Actually, what I like to do is directly compare between parents who do play the game themselves and parents who do not actually play the game themselves. And so now this table shows us that this code appears 7 times, or is mentioned 7 times by participants in this group and 4 times by participants in this group. So it's just giving us frequencies of codes, but this is an example of where using groups can really help us to make these kinds of comparisons and contrasts. And so now we can very clearly see between those who do and don't play and what's going on here. We have some descriptions that are only mentioned by parents who play, and we have some descriptions only mentioned by parents who don't. And so this again can give us some kind of more nuanced insights, and naturally we can see the data behind the numbers. And also here we have some more options. And so sometimes it can happen that you have unbalanced groups, so we have a lot more participants who don't play than those who do. And so actually, if we wanted to compare the absolute numbers, then this of course would be skewed. But if this is a problem for us, then we can normalize the table. And then ATLAS.ti takes into consideration the density of coding in each group, and then it actually adjusts the numbers. On the other hand, we can binarize the table if we just want to see yes or no. I'm not interested in all these numbers. I just want to see whether or not it appears. And what's also really interesting is looking at relative frequencies. And I think this is how we can start to develop even more nuanced insights. And so we can see what kinds of descriptions were most frequently mentioned in this group or in this group. And so we can look at relative frequencies of the column or the row or the whole table. And again, to save this result, we can export it to Excel, and it'll export whatever options you've selected. And of course, we can also see this information visually in the Sankey diagram. So then we can see exactly what kinds of descriptions were given in each of these groups. So the code document table lets us look at how many times any of our codes appear in any part of our project. And so now that we've been doing all these different kinds of analyses and querying the data, looking at patterns among our codes and comparing where they're appearing across the project, then a final really helpful way to make sense of all of this information is to also create networks and to visually display everything and start drawing connections across it all. And so, for example, a lot of participants were talking about, monsters and violence in the game. And so we can make networks to look at codes as well as any quotations that are attached and draw connections across all these different things. And so we can even see the data that we have. In fact, let's go ahead and create a new network here. Why don't we open up a new network? And, I find this notion of the game being like a world of imagination really interesting. So let's explore this a little more. So we have a blank space here. And in ATLAS.ti, we can visualize any part of our project in a network. So since I'm interested in this code about a world of imagination, I'm going to start with this. And so to add an object, we just drag and drop it in. And then thinking about what do we see about this world of imagination idea? Well, we already saw before that it was related to building things, right? That we had that co-occurrence there. And so we can add this code here. And now let's say I want to connect these two to say that these two ideas are associated here. So to connect any objects in a network, you just click on this little circle that appears in the corner. We click drag and drop onto the other code we want to associate this with. And when we let go of the mouse, we can choose a name for this relation, and that this code is associated with this code. And so we could see then as well, you can continue to add codes and then say, or maybe actually in the other way. So we just click on the little circle and then drag and drop and choose a name for the relation. And let's see, well, sure. Now we can actually create any kind of relation name that we want. So if you don't like any of the options that are there, we can click on create relation right here. And then maybe write any kind of name we want. And we can put any color that we want as well. So as always, there are many flexible things that we can do in ATLAS.ti, so we can draw any kind of network that we would like. And if we've been writing comments on our codes to give these definitions of our codes, we click on view, we have the option to look at all this additional detailed information. So here we have this big comment, but I'll just resize that so it's easier to read. And another really great thing about the networks is this allows us to keep exploring all the things that might be connected across the project. And so, for example, we can also right click on any object and add any of its neighbors. So anything else has been associated with this object. And so if I want to see the quotations that are attached to this code, we can also bring these in. And then we can also view quotation previews so that we can see the actual data here. So exactly what participants said, what images we found that are relevant here. And we can see some quotations how are associated with this other code as well. So ATLAS.ti naturally remembers all those codings that we did. And so now we can explore all the data that we have coming from these two, that's illustrating this. And remember, we can visualize any part of our project. So why not also add that memo that we wrote before as well about building things? We can also preview memos. And we can continue to attach memos to different parts of the network. So everything can be linked. We can even link quotations with quotations, if you just want to work on the level of the data, then we can also do that here and show how they're related to one another. So networks are really flexible, but it's a really great way to explore connections across things and maybe even kind of draw this overarching picture of your analysis and what you're finding and how these different concepts are related. And so we can use co-occurrence and in our own insights, to kind of draw these out. You can also use networks just for brainstorming, like making a mind map, as well as building your own conceptual or theoretical framework. And then this is also something interesting to include in final reports or presentations, since we can explore the data, the codes, our own comments and notes. It's a really great way to explore the analysis. And again, to kind of look at our analysis in different ways, to even take a step back and start to identify overarching patterns and trends. And so with that, we've seen our global overview of ATLAS.ti for Mac, and I hope everyone enjoyed. Like I said, I know it's a lot of information, but at least now you all have an idea of what sorts of things we can do. And I'm putting up my contact information again here. Either of these email addresses works. In case you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And now I'm happy to answer questions that we have here in the chat. I do apologize, we're a little bit on the time. So if you need to go, of course, I understand. But I'm happy to stay for a few more minutes to answer the questions we have here. And so for example, I see, let's see, someone asking about, we can revise how to find the code manager tool again. Yeah, absolutely. So you can find it, whenever in doubt, just look at the menus at the top because you have all of the options there. So here you have the code manager. But also here, it's like a shortcut for the most frequently used things. So you also have the code manager there. And we also have a question about using a spreadsheet as source data. And so if you have text inside Excel, to find a list of common words. So if you have an Excel list of words you want to search for, then absolutely, you can use this as a Go list. And so what you could do then, to manage your lists, you can import a list, or you can even create a list right here. And then you can tell ATLAS.ti, I only want to look for words from this list. That's what a Go list is, only these ones. While a stop list is telling it, ignore these ones. And then that way you can count the frequencies of those words in your text. If you want to automatically code for those words, then you need to use the search and code tool. So the word list and word cloud tells you how many times, but if you want to code for it, then you'll use text search. So I hope that answers your question, because you can also import Excel as codes. If you have your codes, you can import those all in one go from Excel. Or if you have data in Excel, like a survey, like we did here, then you'll import that as survey data, right? So there's different ways depending on what you're using your Excel for, but yes. And I see we have one more question. Yeah, you like how the codes are organized? Yes, this is a helpful way, using prefixes, colors, groups. This is what we always recommend. We actually have in our blog, if you search, there's some great articles about this as well. And so let's see. So you're asking about, you say sometimes the 2 or 3 questions have repetitive answers, so it's the same code repeating. And in an instance like that, how do you make it appear under one heading? So the benefit section and not the feature section. You need to recode it so that it appears under both sections. So talking about appearing under sections, actually, yeah, this is a good question. It's a really common question, but a lot of people also say, I want to have a hierarchical code list with codes and subcodes or themes and subthemes. And actually in ATLAS.ti, everything is on the same level. There's no imposed hierarchy. And this is again on purpose because it's a flexible tool. So the way we can make this hierarchy if we want is just by renaming codes, because by default, it shows them in alphabetical order. So it's as simple as that. And we just rename it. And so we like to put category names in capital letters, but you see, it doesn't even have any quotations associated. There's a 0 here. So we don't even use these for coding. They're like dummy codes just to make the category name. And then we have the prefix. So when we were first analyzing, we were just creating codes like this, like creativity, right? And I was just writing creativity, building things, collaborating, and they were all over the place. And then when you have a lot of codes, say, okay, I need to organize this a little bit. And so then that's where you can open up the code manager and then start clicking and saying, all right, so these things I see, yeah, they're related to different kinds of benefits. And so then we can make that group. And then for each of these, we'll just rename them to give them this prefix. And so I need to do that here. And then since they're in alphabetical order, they'll always appear together. And then we can also click on the color wheel to give it a color so they all match. Here, actually, I see that they are very similar. So we can even also combine codes by merging them. And then they combine into one and all of the quotations also stay saved, right? So you can do all sorts of editing with your codes here. And then we have it like that. So I hope that that answers your question, but they're appearing together because of prefixes, because it's just in alphabetical order. And so we can put any kinds of prefixes we want. It can also be symbols, numbers, letters. So there, yeah, you can explore that, but you do not need to recode. So exactly, when you're coding your data, and that's great. And I think when in doubt, it's better to add more codes because later it's really easy to delete codes, merge codes, move them around. That's easy to do. We can do this all from the code manager. But what's harder is if you have to go back and recode the data. Even if you have one code with many quotations, you can even split the code. So we have all these options, and we have video tutorials that go into more detail about this. And so if you're interested in any of these things, then please feel free to send me an email and I'd be happy to point you in the right direction. And then, okay, one more question. This is also an important question. Okay, great, Ishani. I'm glad to hear that helps. Yeah, great. And then, yeah, one more question about privacy. And so what's going on with the data that we add to our projects? Are they kept private, or is ATLAS.ti storing this somewhere? Yeah, this is a good and important question. So with ATLAS.ti Mac, ATLAS.ti Windows, everything is always only saved on your local computer. So we do not have some server where we're uploading everything. We never have access to your projects. It's just you and it's just your computer. So in that sense, it's totally your privacy and security. Yeah, I understand this is very important. We have sometimes really sensitive information. If you're using ATLAS.ti Web, that's a different story because there you're on the internet and they are being stored on the servers in Berlin. Of course, these are also very secure servers, and you can talk to our web technicians if you need more information about it. But with ATLAS.ti Mac or Windows, it's just your computer. Now, if you do want to share your project with someone else, or you want to open it on another computer, then we just have to export the project. We go to Project, Export. And then this saves a copy of the project in one single file. They can be sent to another computer, another person. They can be opened in ATLAS.ti Mac or Windows. And this is also how we save backup copies. So for everyone, whether you're in a team or working alone, I highly recommend and implore you to regularly save backups so that even if something were to happen to this computer, well, we have a copy of the project saved in our hard drive or our cloud drive, and then we can always open it again on any other computer with ATLAS.ti. So yeah, so thanks everyone. I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed the presentation, and in case there's any other questions or follow-ups, feel free to drop me an email and I'd be happy to keep discussing with you. But yeah, I do apologize for going over time. So we'll go ahead and start wrapping up the session now. But certainly, yeah, feel free, count on our support for any other questions that might come up. And well, other than that, I just want to wish everyone lots of health and all the best in your qualitative data analysis journeys with ATLAS.ti. So thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day and weekend ahead. Goodbye.